Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. And autumn is pressing on everywhere and the game is no exception. I personally can't believe it's November already, but then again, one of the best things that happens in November, at least for World of Tanks, is that we get a well-deserved reward, and it looks like this year is going to be no exception. So for everyone out there who doesn't know what the well-deserved reward is, just to get you up to date quickly, Wargaming give you a reward depending on how long you have played the game. If you've played it for long enough, they actually will give you an entire vehicle that has been removed from the game. Last year it was the Super Hellcat, the year before that it was the T-52, and of course one of the most frequently asked questions that I have had this year is, QuickyBaby, what do you think this year's well-deserved reward is going to be? And everyone who has heard my answer will know that I have been saying that it is the Aufklarungspanzer Panther. And so, very, very suspicious Wargaming that today you would leak statistics that currently the Aufklarungspanzer Panther is back on the super test at tier 7 once again. And while I'm definitely not going to confirm, I have absolutely no idea whether this is going to be this year's well-deserved reward, it does seem like a bit of a coincidence, right? Nevertheless, irrelevant of whether it is going to be this year's well-deserved reward or not, today I'm going to have a good rummage around in the statistics, so all of you out there who remember when this was the tier 7 German tech tree light tank can find out whether the new Aufklarungspanzer Panther that they are super testing at tier 7 is actually any good. Alright, so the Aufklarungspanzer Panther, how many times am I going to have to say that during this video? Quite a lot of times. I'd like to apologize to all of my lovely German viewers out there for probably trashing some of your glorious nation's language today. What's the first thing to talk about with this vehicle? That is that it has a 5-person crew, a commander, a radio operator, a loader, a gunner, and a driver. Now that's pretty awkward these days if it is going to be a reward vehicle, because obviously the top tier German light tank, the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, has a 3-person crew. I believe it has a commander, a gunner, and a driver. So you're going to need a loader and a radio operator from somewhere. However, for all of you out there who have one of the cutest tanks in the game at tier 4, it's looksing good for you because that tank actually has a radio operator and a loader. So combine your Rheinmetall Panzerwagen crew with your Lux crew, and then you can slam them in the Aufklarungspanzer Panther and you should be sorted. This vehicle is also bizarre because it only has 2 kinds of ammunition. It completely omits the high explosive rounds for the 75mm on this tank. However, you know what, all of these other statistics, they all look a bit weird, right? So of course, in true QuickyBaby fashion, I've managed to get them onto an Excel spreadsheet for your enjoyment. Okay, so firstly, to clarify, things have changed for the Aufklarungspanzer Panther. The column on the left is going to be what we're calling the old AFK Panther. That's because this tank had so many names. A lot of people called it the Aufklarungspanzer Panther, which is its actual name. Would make sense that you would call something by its actual name. Also, the AFK Panther, abbreviating it. A lot easier to say out there for all of you non-German native speakers. And also, it was called the Awful Panther because of what a stigma it had. Because a lot of the player base truly hated this tank and thought it was absolutely trash, and you had to play through it to be able to get up to the RU-251, which was actually a pretty good tank at tier 8. Okay, so I want to clarify that the old Aufklarungspanzer Panther at tier 7 actually had worse matchmaking than in theory the new tier 7 would have now. Now, QuickyBaby, what are you talking about? It all doesn't make any sense. That's because old light tanks used to get matched up as if they were 1 tier higher, and so consequently, the old Aufklarungspanzer Panther at tier 7 got matched up as if it was a tier 8 light tank. These days, if the Aufklarungspanzer Panther goes in at tier 7 now, then the worst tier it's going to have to meet is tier 9. The old Aufklarungspanzer Panther would have had to have dealt with tier 10 tanks and would have never have seen tier 5 like the new Aufklarungspanzer Panther possibly could. Now, before we dig into these statistics, I'd like to clarify one thing, and that is that these statistics are not final and everything is subject to change, and that's why they are being super tested. But really what you should think is that if I'm comparing it to the old Aufklarungspanzer Panther, which was effectively a whole tier higher, at least with the matchmaking of the vehicle, although then again, sometimes light tanks did get matched up as top tier back then, but then they would have never met the tier 5s. All a bit confusing. What I'm trying to say is that if the statistics are roughly similar Now, considering the better matchmaking that this vehicle will have, it should be actually a big boost in performance for the tank. Okay, so what has Wargaming done to the Aufklarungspanzer Panther? Well, it's still got a 75mm gun. I'm also going to be comparing this tank to the SP1C as well. You see the old AFK on the left and the new AFK with the preliminary statistics from the super test in the middle. But I also want to compare it to the standard Tier 7 tech tree vehicle, which was its replacement, the SP1C. So it's 75mm gun. A lot of you might be immediately alarmed to see that this thing only has 135 alpha damage. But I'm going to say this, it works on the Cromwell at tier 6, so you could probably make it work at tier 7 as well. And I love the Comet with 140 alpha damage, so I will know that I will be able to make this work. However, one thing that I definitely won't be able to make work is the rate of fire nerf that this vehicle has been hit with. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if you used to absolutely love the rate of fire of the Aufklarungspanzer Panther, which was over 17 rounds a minute, it has been shredded down to just below 11 rounds a minute. That is an unbelievable nerf to the damage per minute that this vehicle was capable of. The tank used to actually shred its opponents fairly quickly, if you were able to penetrate them, of course, and be able to do consistent damage because of the incredible rate of fire, but very poor alpha damage for trading. That will mean that this tank is no longer some kind of all-in aggressive freak of a vehicle that will actually take down its opponents fairly quickly. Is it going to have to snipe and do tiny little bits of chip damage? Ooh, I think that's going to really hurt the vehicle. But of course, we expected some things to be demolished on this vehicle if Wargaming are giving it that whole tier better matchmaking. And it does bring it more in line with the SP1C. But remember, the SP1C nearly has double the alpha damage. It also has better premium penetration, albeit by 5, that Wargaming have seen fit to nerf from the old Aufklarungspanzer Panther, which used to have 221mm of gold pen. Okay, so now let's move on to the gun handling. And this is pretty good news for the new Aufklarungspanzer Panther, as it has the best in stats, kind of accuracy and aim time for a tier 7 light tank. And it's slightly better than the old Aufklarungspanzer Panther and superior to the SP1C. The vehicle also gets a very comfortable 10 degrees of gun depression and 20 degrees of gun elevation, so you should be able to make that work. And the turret traverse is 44 degrees, so you should be able to quickly re-engage your opponents irrelevant of where they are, compared to the SP1C, which actually only has 35. Now onto the mobility. The Aufklarungspanzer Panther is effectively a Panther hull with a supercharged engine in the form of a light tank. Bit weird, right? Kind of makes sense though, at least at tier 7. If you played it back in the day, you'll know, oh, it made sense in quite a few areas. So the vehicle has actually lost a bit of its engine power. It's gone from 900 to 850. One thing that's very interesting is that Wargaming have told me, at least with the preliminary statistics that they've given me, that the engine power has gone up compared to the old Aufklarungspanzer Panther to 22.3. Now this is very interesting because in theory, that means that the Aufklarungspanzer Panther has lost weight as it's got older, unlike most people like me that seems to be gaining weight as they get older, right? So what that means is that even though the power to weight ratio of the Aufklarungspanzer Panther has gone up, its engine power has gone down, which thus means that Wargaming are trimming a little bit of the fat off the old Aufklarungspanzer Panther and putting it down to 38 tons. So for all of you out there who love to ram in this vehicle, I know that's going to be a little bit disappointing, but at least it's only 10% of the weight. But still, that was what was so special about this vehicle back in the day, was ramming some of the medium tanks, even the more lightly armored medium tanks, with a light tank and having that extra impact for the alpha to maybe be able to finish something off or just have fun and play this vehicle gloriously. So the power to weight ratio of this vehicle is infinitely worse than the SP1C, but just take a look at the weight difference. The Aufklarungspanzer Panther is literally 4 SP1Cs combined together. So I think you might be starting to see possibly what you could ram in this vehicle. Yeah, I wouldn't want to play my SP1C on Aufklarungspanzer Panther Day, that's for sure. You can ram pretty much every single light tank in the game with this tank, as this big boy, if it does return to the game, will actually weigh pretty much 20 or 30% more than any other light tank, even some of the heaviest light tanks in the game, like the WZ-1321. So definitely ram any light tank you can see in this vehicle. You might even want to have controlled impact on your driver just for the absolute jokes, and you'll really be able to have some fun with those kind of collisions. Wargaming, however, have also kind of nerfed the fun just a little bit compared to back in the day. They've reduced the top speed from 60 to 55, which actually makes this quite a slow light tank. I thought the SP-1C was not exactly the fastest with a top speed limit of 58, and it does have that better power weight to weight ratio than the Aufklarungspanzer Panther. So yeah, Wargaming have probably seen, maybe it's not a good idea if we put it back in the game with better matchmaking that it had, as it's going to just do some absolutely outrageous hits. And while it's still going to be able to do some very good hits, they're going to be toned down just a little bit. So obviously you might be thinking, well, this light tank, it's pretty much a Panther with a supercharged engine, right? It used to weigh 42 tons, now it weighs just over 38 tons. How about its armor? And its armor is actually pretty okay. It's going to work against your tier 5 opponents. It's going to work sometimes against your tier 6. And it's definitely going to help you take those high explosive round hits. And it's going to dissuade enemy light tanks from firing HE at you as well. Or maybe there's a KB2. You could probably, most of the time at least, be able to bounce that, or should I say absorb that HE shell from the enemy team and then really go to town on them. Maybe probably even ram a KB2 as well. You're going to lose a lot of hit points, but at least you'll go down gloriously, right? So this vehicle has 85 on the front, 50 on the side, 40 at the rear, and 50 on the turret, 30 on the side of the turret, and 30 at the rear of the turret. This definitely isn't fantastic, but it's definitely also not terrible at the same time. And it makes the SP-1C look like a very lightly armored tank, but it is also one of the most lightly armored vehicles in the game. So even though Wargaming have effectively given this vehicle better matchmaking, they've also increased the hit points to 1,000. I just feel like that is such a lovely amount to have on a tier 7 light tank. Some tier 8 light tanks have 1,150, so to have 1,000 at tier 7 will give you the hit points to be able to weather the storm, to maybe make that extra crunchy ram. That'd be quite fun. However, one thing that I don't like about what they've done is they've reduced the view range of this vehicle, which means that really you're probably going to have to take coated optics on this vehicle, which is disappointing because I was hoping I was going to put vertical stabilizers, a gun rammer, and vents, and have my very good crew combined with maybe a premium consumable to still get a decent enough view range. But really, it's getting to the stage where you're probably going to need to have the coated optics on this vehicle, or alternatively use the commander's vision system in the vision slot to kind of make up for that as well. That's actually probably going to be the superior module to use on this vehicle. So I'm leaning towards maybe having a gun rammer with vertical stabilizers and a commander's vision system, or probably a gun rammer with maybe even vents and just drop the vert stabs altogether, depending on how good the gun handling is going to be, because those are hidden statistics that we don't quite have yet. And the CVS will help you to be able to spot moving targets, as well as also those ones that are in bushes. Now, one thing that sucked about the old Aufklarungspanzer Panther was the camo rating. Its base camo rating is 11.69, and while you're going to be able to bump that up with a concealment crew, it's never going to really get very high. And I'm pretty sure nothing will have changed with the new Aufklarungspanzer Panther. This is not a subtle tank. It is a big, old, meaty boy of a vehicle, and accordingly, it is a super easy target to hit. To be fair, I mean, if this does end up being the well-deserved reward, you might possibly, I don't know, kind of want to go and play your SU-152s on that kind of release day. I didn't say it. I didn't say that this is an easy tank to hit that has about the right amount of hit points for you to one-shot with an HE shell. Although whether you're going to be able to pen that HE shell is another question. It does actually have, look at about 125 millimeters of effective armor. So, I don't know, maybe just fire the AP round in your SU-152 or even load heat and then just absolutely shred it. You didn't hear it here. You didn't hear it here, boys and girls. Or to be fair, actually, you could hit anywhere on this vehicle with an AP shell and overmatch it apart from the upper plate, which is 185. So you could hit anywhere on the side, you could hit anywhere on the lower plate, anywhere on the turret. And because it's only 50, it's always going to go in with AP. So all in all, what do I think about the statistics that Wargaming have given preliminary to the Aufklarungspanzer Panther? I think they look pretty good. I think they look pretty fair. I think this looks like a cracking tank, and I'm looking forward to getting it back on the battlefield. However, I was one of those weirdos that liked this vehicle back in the day. I did enjoy playing it as a bit of a meme kind of tank, and I had a lot of fun just kicking around in it. However, I don't think everyone really felt the same. Out of the 107,000 people who played the Aufklarungspanzer Panther back in the day, the vehicle had a sub 48% win ratio. However, on the other hand, remember that back in the day, there were a lot more draws in World of Tanks than there currently are. So maybe that would be the equivalent of a 48.5 or even a 49% average win ratio in today's terms. All I'm saying is that this vehicle used to have, I don't know, pretty bad statistics for a tier 7 light tank, albeit with tier 8 matchmaking. So for wargaming to actually buff certain areas of the vehicle while nerfing the other ones that would probably make it outrageous as a tier 7 light tank with tier 7 matchmaking, I'm looking forward to this one. I think they seem to have got it about right. And all that I know is that I am going to be incredibly disappointed if this is not the well-deserved reward now. I'm so looking forward to it. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for me today. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know what you think about the initial statistics of the Aufklarungspanzer Panther. Do you think they look awesome? Do you think that it looks awful? Did you play this tank back in the day? Did you absolutely love it and you can't wait for it to come back? Did you absolutely hate it and it's going to become a free garage slot and maybe a few credits when you sell the vehicle? And if you're watching one of my videos for the first time in November because you just had to click it because of the Aufklarungspanzer Panther, I'm back trying to make the end of 2020 just a little bit sweeter by releasing daily videos on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe, and if you want to, click that bell notification as well so you can get them as soon as they come out every single day. Looking forward to it. We're already 6 in. Got about another 54 to go. Let's do it. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.